What's going on, fellow A-plussers, fellow Force users? It is I, your host, Adam Perez. We are back once again with a brand new Skeleton Crew live review and discussion for you guys as we're set to go ahead and get into episode number 7, the penultimate episode of the series itself, as we say farewell to the show as of next week and dive into the season finale. How did this week's episode do? Are we excited for the season finale, guys? We're going to be talking about it with you guys here today. Not just myself, but 3/4 of our high council is certainly in the house today, as we got good old Willem Polk coming through once again, and a returning Stuart Branscombe, as we certainly missed him last week. How's it going, fellas? How's everybody doing today, man?
Doing well. Thinking about our friend Crystal. She lives in Los Angeles area, so I know she was hoping to join us, but had to get the go bag ready just in case. But hopefully she'll be safe. And to all the folks out there in Los Angeles who's dealing with this and who've lost their homes and stuff, we're thinking about you.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to everybody out there. Prayers for sure. It looks like it's been an incredible time out there, to certainly say the least. But everybody, please be safe. Yeah, Crystal, unfortunately, is not going to be able to make it with us today. Being on the lookout just in case. I think she stated, would you say, Will, that there was a fire about maybe 5 miles from her? So they wasn't sure if they were going to evacuate or anything like that as of yet. But better safe than sorry. So if you know anybody out there, give them our condolences, our prayers. You guys definitely be safe out there. Stuart, I know you're in California, but you're very more northern California, right?
Yeah, a lot towards San Francisco, the Bay Area. So I don't think there's going to be any issues like in my area.
Yeah, everybody be safe out there for sure. But Stuart, it's good to have you back, man. Where you been, man? We missed you, bro.
Man, I just the timing hasn't worked out the last couple weeks as much as I really hoped it would, but I am back, and I will definitely be back again, of course, next week for the season series or season finale. Who knows if it gets renewed or not? But I am looking forward to that, and looking forward to talking about this episode.
Yeah, I will be curious if this series gets a second episode. I'm kind of under the impression that Disney wants to give it its own episode, its own season, a second season at least. I don't know if there's like a Jude Law spinoff show coming as Jad Nawad or whatnot, but I am under the impression that they have plans for a second season, but nothing's been officially greenlit as of yet. Have you heard anything, Will, other than that?
I know whenever we first started talking about the series, maybe episodes 1 or 2, I thought maybe it was just they were like hopeful for a season 2, but somewhere I thought they may have mentioned that they had sort of a soft approval for a season 2. So
okay,
yeah, I'll have to look.
Yeah, I'll have to look that one up too also. Shout out to G Will for joining us here today, man. First and foremost, guys, if you're watching us live, wherever you're watching us from, feel free to chime in at any particular point in time. These are simply our A+ opinions, but we always want to certainly know yours and bounce discussion off of you guys as well. So please certainly go ahead and let us know your thoughts. G Will says, I haven't watched it. Should I get into it? What do you guys think? Any suggestions for G Will?
I'd say yeah. It's just like if you're a Star Wars fan, you're gonna like it because it's got as long as you're not expecting it to have a big impact on the overall Star Wars universe, I would definitely recommend it. And I would also just recommend it if you're looking for a fun sci-fi show out there.
Yeah, I would recommend it. I really I'll not get into too deep with this episode tonight, but so far the first 6 episodes I've really enjoyed. Definitely feel like Star Wars got its mojo back with this series. So yeah, I would definitely strongly recommend it.
Yeah, I would recommend it also. He said the way Ahsoka went hurt me. And I personally think it's yeah, I mean, I didn't mind Ahsoka, but I totally get it for sure. I had my issues with the series itself too, but Skeleton Crew just feels vastly different. In regards to what Christopher Ford and John Watts is certainly doing, I've really enjoyed the story they've decided to go ahead and tackle. While I don't feel like it's a super serious story, I feel like it's one that's definitely got me in like enthralled in it. Like I'm really curious to see how this story kind of unfolds. I've really enjoyed the characters so far, the story beats and things like that along the way. It's been a really fun ride for me. I've had a good time with this series so far, so I'm really looking forward to seeing how the season finale certainly shapes up next week. But fellas, Let's get into episode number 7. As always, we're going to give our overall thoughts on how we thought this particular episode went. Then we'll get into the nitty gritty and talk about particular topics for this before we grade the episode at the end of the show. Since Crystal's not here to go first, Will, since you certainly are always our special guest each and every week here, I definitely want to know your thoughts and pick your brains. What are your overall thoughts on episode 7 here?
Overall, I thought it was a very solid penultimate episode. Did what it needed to do. I will say that the ending did leave me a little bit like, yeah. But overall, I really did enjoy it. I think it was fun to see the kids having a moment to just be kids again, and at the beginning of the episode, and then as far as how things progressed, I think the parents reappeared this week, and of course
Yeah,
it
they
was
did.
it was sort of shades of ET. So of course, with that, there's definitely a lot of Easter eggs, and obviously the Treasure Island references and everything that we've seen up to this point in the series. And also I love the moment there with the parents where we almost get T&G Will's comment about is there anything familiar with. There was a moment there where almost got a very famous saying that is in every Star Wars property, but they managed to cut it off.
Yeah, getting into that. Hey, we know Star Wars too, guys. Look at this quote we
Yeah.
use, type of thing. Yeah, it could definitely definitely be a little bit too much at times for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would agree with you. A solid episode as far as a penultimate episode to build up towards a finale. What about you, Stuart? How did this episode hit you?
Yeah, I fully agree with Will. It was exactly what a penultimate episode needed to be. I like everything that was definitely getting set up with the pirates on the outside of the planet, and then of course you have Jude Law's character, with the kids and the parents, getting ready to basically open up communications. I think that's like almost the perfect cliffhanger. I think that maybe they could have done more conflict, like going, like going into that like last scene that we see. But other than that, like I think that in terms of what was set up and what we have to look forward to next week, I think this episode did everything that it needed to do.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, similar to how you guys kind of felt about the ending of this, the cliffhanger, if you will. Yeah, there was a aspect of it being maybe a little flat for me. I
Mhm.
think what it was is while I really appreciated the close-up shot of the lightsaber and the close-up of Neil and his family, I don't know what it was about that wide shot that just didn't do it for me, if that makes sense. Like it felt like a really weird choice of a closing shot. It made it feel a little bit anticlimactic in a sense. I almost would have preferred the episode end with him turning on the lightsaber in front of Neil's family and then going out like that. I don't know. Does that make sense? Could like a scene selection be a poor choice to kind of end an episode sometimes?
Yeah, I completely agree. The shot selection, I think, is what part of where I went had the
Because I was expecting
kind of
something else
reaction.
after it.
Yeah, and also it is what don't want to jump to a con, but I just felt like I the way that I would have if I had one, I would have definitely used a different shot with the way that in that episode for one, but two, I just don't know if you know it seemed rushed, I guess, a
Mhm.
little bit, where the parents come down, and it really I don't know how because the impression that leading into that was they went down into the vault, and that nobody could else get down there, but then the parents do show up, and then Jude Law instantly. The impression I got with the cliffhanger was like he's gonna follow through with some of the bad things gonna that he had shared with the kids. Whereas I was really hoping that they would leave it a little bit more. They could have just not had the lightsaber, to be honest, because then it would have left us with the question: is he going to be act like a good guy who has helped these kids along, or whereas the impression I got here is like he's going to follow through with what he said during the episode.
I think like my biggest problem with kind of like that last ending bit there was like usually for penultimate episodes, I always want to see the characters in a situation where I don't know how they're going to get out of this. I want to be guessing the entire week. And I think what we were left with felt kind of underwhelming because it's just, one guy who is force sensitive, but we also see that, he's still more like he's not like as OP as most Jedis are because we've seen him get taken down by his own crew so many times, and now we see him surrounded by the parents. Sure, he's holding his lightsaber, but it's like one of those things where he doesn't have his crew with him. The other pirates are still orbiting the atmosphere. And they still don't know how to get into At Attin. And I think because of that, like there's nothing really having me on the edge of my seat at the end here. I think there's like a million ways our main characters will, be able to get out of this situation. But the show is kind of presenting it as like oh man, our characters are really stuck now. But it's like, I feel like they're kind of at the safest they've been in a while. And that's kind of how they end it, which again, usually with the penultimates, right before we're getting to the climax, you want us on the edge of our seats. You want us to wonder, how are they going to get into this, rather than come up with a million ideas of how, because again, it just doesn't feel like they're in that much of a dangerous situation as we've seen them in the past. So I think that's where my disappointment was. Like, I think everything else about this episode worked really well. I just think the payoff was extremely underwhelming. And it's just because I'm kind of used to more, again, these type of endings where they usually have me just like wondering,
I think now that I'm thinking about it, while I do like that shot of the lightsaber and Neil's parents, it does have remnants of Revenge of the Sith in the sense of like this guy's about to chop down some kids, but it almost felt a little bit repetitive in the sense that we kind of got that shot or that sequence a little bit on the ship also, where he had the kids and he has his lightsaber out, sort of thing, right? So it did feel a little bit repetitive in that sense. For me, I think I probably would have cut off the episode with him discovering the gold, and we see him look like he's being brought to tears almost for the discovery, and then he turns into like this maniacal sort of laughter sort of thing. And I thought the music went so beautifully with it in the sense of just like a sinister sort of strings in regards to the musical instrument, and maybe seeing him have like this complete, I don't want to say mental breakdown, but like just this breakdown of a character because of his greed finally, his finally getting his reward. I probably would have cut it sort of right in the middle of his laughter or something like that, because or with the shot of the kids in the background watching this guy like fall over himself because of this gold sort of thing. Because I think then it leaves you going into next week's episode like, well, where does this leave these characters? Clearly John has completely lost it right now. So I probably would have cut it off at his maniacal laughter in the vault.
That would have been perfect, actually. The more I think about it.
Yeah, the way, and I'm glad you brought that scene up, and also just from your thumbnail that you used that particular sequence, and just the face acting that Jude Law had there. I mean, that was, you're right. I mean, he conveyed just not speaking a word of dialogue, but just all in face acting and body movement and everything. He really conveyed all the things that you described, Adam, as far as now, he's. Well, not only that scene, but just like whenever he first goes into the vault, and just everything about it. I mean, that was just, kudos to Jude Law, because clearly that was probably done in the volume. But he was able to, I doubt they built a practical set for that. But he conveyed so much in those scenes that, to your point, I think if they had ended the episode there, it would have been a good kind of point to this, like, okay, in there. And then and then the big thing that we have to think about over the next week is how is he going to like get all this out of the
gold out,
all this gold out, and yeah.
And it was before the parents even came, right? So the parents could have come in the beginning of the next episode also. But yeah, I just thought it was a really good moment, because all episode we see him definitely taking this course towards just really truly becoming like the main villain of this show, it feels like. And so for him to finally get that gold in his sort of sinister, greedy laugh, I thought would have been really good. But as far as my thoughts on episode overall, I mean, I agree with you guys. A solid episode for the penultimate for sure. I did like the aspect of the emotional sort of range that we wind up getting in this episode. And I think you kind of tapped into it at the beginning, Will, of the episode has, I think, really great end caps of emotions, like as far as highs go, right? Like the beginning of this episode starting off with the kids just joyous playing around the spacecraft, knowing that they're certainly on their way home, thinking about the future, only to end this episode on a completely different emotional beat of them in despair, their family and them trapped at the hands of sort of this crazy force sensitive user pirate sort of thing. So I really did enjoy sort of all the ranges that we wind up getting in here. I mean, when it comes to the emotions, especially the message, which I thought was really impactful in regards to speaking to kind of all the kids a little bit as well. And the humor beats, I thought they had some pretty good humorous moments in here too. Like the two that jump out at me, when Jod and Brutus are on the ship and they send the pilot in to go, and the guy gets destroyed, and there's just a brief moment of silence, and Jod's like, well, maybe we could send another one in there. Like, no, we're not doing that. Or even Neil, when he, in the very beginning, when he's talking about the adventure, he says, well, yeah, half the time I was about to die, but that's what an adventure is. And I'm like, Neil, our definitions of adventure are completely different, my guy. Like, but I honestly feel like Neil has some of the best lines in this season so far. But yeah, I thought the episode really had its moments. I felt like while I enjoy the visuals are definitely beautiful in here, and while I usually have enjoyed the musical score throughout this season, for me, I thought the music really carried this episode even more than maybe previous ones. It felt like there was like some level of great music in almost every sequence that we wind up getting to convey some level of emotion. So yeah, I guess my takeaway for this would be very emotional episode from front to back, and getting to kind of see these character arcs, especially for Jod, I thought really made for an enjoyable episode, and one that's a solid penultimate to lead us into a finale for sure.
Yeah. One thing I really love is like going back to Jod with the whole after he like betrayed the kids. I loved how there was kind of a brief moment where I kept like thinking to myself, is there a chance that, he's still looking after the kids in his own way, shape, or form? Because, when the ship appeared and they were about to fire on it, was him saying, don't fire on that ship? Was that greed of him trying to get the gold? Or was it like actually a part of him going, oh, wait, I don't necessarily want to hurt the kids. Sure, I want to make sure I make money, but I mean, that doesn't mean I want the kids dead or anything. But then, of course, the moment he gets back onto the ship and like he's, taking command, you kind of realize, nope, this guy is just a complete scumbag and it's just in for himself and no one else. And I really like that. It's the way they kind of built his character, the way we kind of see him throughout the show. It's like one of those, the way he's written is that he can go either way. And I kind of like that they're committing to, or seemingly at least, like maybe the last episode could make a complete 180. I doubt it. And I kind of hope not, because I really do like the way that they're really committing to having him just kind of take on the villain role. And then, yeah, I gotta agree with you, Adam, with the comedic timing that he has in this episode. I think that he had a couple of great scenes, the ones that you mentioned, but then I also got to give credit to Wim, because that scene where it seemed like the kids were like really coming together to come up with an actual plan. Like they're taking all the lessons they've learned throughout their adventure. And then Wim just completely interrupts it by going, sneak attack. And of course it goes about as well as you would expect. I love that, kind of like showing like, yes, our kids have learned a lot, but they're still kids and they'll still make some really dumb decisions here and there. One thing I was kind of disappointed by, kind of going back to like how I felt like there just wasn't enough tension, like kind of at the very last scene that they chose to end it on, is in the very beginning, you have like all the kids really being at their like kind of closest they've been since the series began, which I like. I think that's, again, we're talking about patterns of a lot of penultimate kind of finales for usually first season running shows. This tends to be kind of like how they start. It's like everyone's on the same page for the first time since the show began. And then usually there's that point in the episode where like suddenly like everyone's kind of on their own page, and like suddenly they're back to kind of like butting heads. And I thought when Wim did that, that was going to be the direction that they were going to go in that episode. But instead they still kind of like had their heads collected, which is, it's cool. It's just, again, one of those things I feel like they could have added to build up more tension again for the very last shot of the episode, but they ended up kind of going in a more, I guess I would call it, safe direction by having the kid still saying level-headed. But yeah, I also got to give a lot of credit to Jude Law, because I do love the way he can really go from being the kind of comedic pirate when he's really trying to save his own skin, how he'll really just say anything to save himself. But then the moment he has control, it's like, you kind of see a more terrifying side of him when he does get control. When he's like losing control, he's funny, but when he has it, he's terrifying.
Yeah.
Oh, you're muted.
Amateur. Shout out to Jude Law, man, for just being an incredible actor and just a top-notch guy. I mean, we talked about this last week, Will, the shanty that he started singing. I read an article this week from Bryce Dallas Howard that said originally that scene was just meant to be spoken as like a poem, and she said it was actually Jude Law's idea to come up to her and say, hey, maybe I should sing this like a shanty. And she says, yeah, give it a shot. And so it was his idea, and I just thought that was just so cool, because it really did elevate that sequence, that scene in particular. So yeah, he has just been really, I don't want to say he's been carrying the show, but I mean, he's really helped elevate this show incredibly well. And we'll stick on on Jod here a little bit too, because I do want to get your thoughts on this also, Will. Stuart brought this up. Last week we were talking about, is there a redemption arc here for Jod? Like, is Jod going to surprise us in this episode, maybe to save the kids, or is he gonna do something to redeem himself in here? I personally don't see it coming, but the fact that it feels like they've committed to making him a villain, I mean, what do you think about that? Like, just the idea that they've allowed us to come along this journey with him to the point of thinking, is he going to redeem himself or not?
Yeah, I agree with Stuart's point with everything he said about Jude Law in this episode, and also throughout the season. I think he is carrying a series quite honest a bit, but also to the point that you raised about him with the shanty. I mean, that just shows how well he knows his character, and so I think that that also is testament to his skill as an actor. But as far as the redemption arc, I am hoping that he truly he's sort of Sith light. well, he has the helmet and everything else, so he's basically he has all the trappings and of being someone who is who would go down the dark path. But I'm hoping that whenever we do get the finale next week, he remains a villain, especially if they have a second season, because if they do the redemption arc now, where do we go from here?
Mm-hmm.
So I think he's gonna, he's gonna be a bad dude for a while.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I almost started this episode when I was gonna do my episode overall thoughts. I was, pardon my French, but I was gonna start this off like, "Fuck you, Jod." Like, you're such an asshole, Jod. Like, I mean, just belittling these kids. I mean, just going full-fledged. I mean, killing in cold blood. Poor Brutus didn't stand a chance in here.
That was a cool moment, I have to say.
It was. I'm just like, oh my god, he committed. He committed.
Yeah.
And then the decapitation of SM-33, I thought was pretty incredible also. I knew he still had his lightsaber, but I mean, just seeing it, I was just like, damn, this guy's ruthless now.
Yeah. And they used the blue blade too. It wasn't like a red blade. So that was the other thing too. Yeah.
Which was like the other interesting thing is that this, like, Jude Law is clearly a bad guy, but he doesn't have the red lightsaber, which to me kind of implies he doesn't use the Force like often, which we also see through the series. Like, he doesn't tend to rely on it as much as we've seen other Jedi do. He kind of only does it when he's like really in a pinch, and it kind of makes sense looking at his lightsaber why he probably hasn't bled yet.
Mm-hmm. I will say, also seeing in this episode, I'm definitely under the impression this man is, I'm under the impression he's never been trained as a Jedi, and I only say that just because of the way that he was wielding the lightsaber around to the kids and stuff. It looked like he just somebody just picked up a random machete one day and it's just like, look what I'm gonna do with it, type of thing. So I don't know. I'm not under the impression that he was ever trained as a Jedi. I almost think that he's somebody that was born force sensitive. I am fascinated that we have not gotten a Jod backstory yet. I am almost curious if that's coming next week's episode, to kind of see, like, as being somebody force sensitive, how did you decide to use these powers for good, for bad, to take advantage of people, sort of thing? Or what caused him to go down this path? I really want to find that out, because I'm not under the impression he started out as a Jedi, but I could be wrong.
So the reason I would disagree with that is only because of the shot we get with him dismantling the droid SM-33, because it looked very similar to some of the techniques and some of the stances you would see the Jedi using in both Attack of the Clones and the Clone Wars. And it could just be a nod. It could just be that it's just the basic stance. So that's what they went with. But to me, I got too many Clone Wars vibes from that shot for me to not think that he was a Padawan at some point.
Yeah, and the age would be right if he were a Padawan during the time of the Clone Wars.
That's true. Yeah, probably escape. But I feel like we've had so many people escape Order 66 and still be alive after all this time. You know what I'm saying? So it's becoming repetitive. Like, how many of y'all did actually survive during this thing?
Yeah.
Maybe
that's what the Rey trilogy will be about.
Yeah, right. Maybe he was giving you the Mace Windu vibes when he cut off Jango Fett's head. Maybe that's what you were getting at there.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, no, I think this episode for Jod was a statement in the sense of this was him really giving or having us understand why he had the nickname Mad Captain Silvo. Like, I definitely felt like he earned that in this particular week's episode, finding opportunities to take advantage of the killing of Brutus, taking on the ship. I mean, the guy even put his helmet back on, sort of thing as well. So he definitely fit that role. And I think too, what I really enjoyed about it so far is that every aspect of this season has warned us about this guy. Everybody that we've bumped into that has known this guy has told us how much of a POS that he is, and like, not to trust this guy. And I think that just really goes to the level of how good the writing has been, that even though people have warned us, it's almost like we've taken on the POV, like the perspective of the children, in the sense of wanting to have hope in this guy that we do not know, hoping that he eventually proves people wrong and shows us this other side to him. But people have been warning us this whole entire time, and we haven't listened. It's like we're with a bad boyfriend and people have been telling us, you need to leave this guy, he's gonna hurt you, and then like we just stick around because I love him, we can change him, and then it never happens, sort of thing. But it's fascinating to me that people have warned us, and even us as viewers have been hoping for some level of redemption, only for him to kind of show his true self, like everybody's been telling us. I think that's just really good writing.
Yeah, and I look back at the Acolyte, and one of the things that disappointed me was kind of like Master Soul towards the end. It just didn't feel like the same character that we saw in the very beginning of the show. But at least I can say here with Jude Law's character, and the reason I keep calling him Jude Law's character is because he has so many names at this point in the show that I'm just waiting for like a big reveal at the very end of the series that he was actually this character the whole time. So for now, until the last episode, I'm just going to call him Jude Law's character. But unlike Master Soul from Star Wars Acolyte, with Jude Law's character, it never felt like the show was gaslighting me when he betrayed the kids, in the previous episode. It felt very in line with everything we knew about the character. Like he could have gone either direction, and to me, it would have made sense.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I think, they did gaslight us. They're pretty bad, but and I think with the whole redemption arc, that's the thing that we're so used to as far as the Star Wars trope. But so I think that's why Adam, you raised the question. Will we get that in the finale? And like I said, I really hope they don't to really foot stomp on what Stuart just said. I mean, I think they have made it very clear about this character, and they're they have a story, and they are like sticking within the lanes that they have established for this story. So if they were to do that in the finale, I would be very disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It
because
would feel like that Walking Dead episode where Eugene turned out to not be working for Negan, and to me that like never made sense because it felt like they were very clear that he was working for Negan. All that, yeah.
yeah, this just felt like a finality in the sense of this is who he is. I felt like this is the biggest of a threat that he's ever really felt. I mean, we got glimpses of it when he decided to take over as captain, sort of thing. But this was very much next level determination, and in order for him to get what he wants, and he didn't really care who he had to frighten, who he had to put down in order to get where he needed to achieve at the end of this episode. So yeah, it feels very final to me in the sense that I'm not expecting a redemption or some sort of twist at the end. It would be interesting maybe learning his backstory to feel maybe sad for him or something like that, if depending on what his backstory is, what I'm saying, to see like I would be curious to see what type of kid he was. Because the way that he talks to the children in the sense of like, you guys are poor, spoiled, rich brats sort of thing. And then even pointing out to Wim, like there is an aspect of like, I wonder if Jod maybe sees a little bit of himself in them when he was younger. And unfortunately his life didn't turn out. Like I would be curious if they make us feel a little bit more for him, despite him being clearly the villain.
Wonder
Yeah,
if,
yeah.
like, as a Padawan, he's seen other kids like going hungry, like and starving during the Clone Wars, and then he sees like the kids and the way they were living on At Attin, or himself when he was living, I won't say like in luxury, but very comfortably as a Jedi.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, I think I do hope they explore his backstory some to really give us a deeper understanding of his motivations beyond greed.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm hoping next week's episode is longer. I was hearing things that it might be like an hour, but
Ooh.
if I can get like 50 minutes, I'll be
So,
happy.
so, so if we see the runtime 130, we know that 30 that means like 40 minutes of that 130, is credits, and we'll get 50 minutes of episode.
Yeah, yeah, half of that'll be recap from the whole season, sort of thing. Yeah, yeah, that's how they do us. e- w- let's talk a little bit about the kids real quick here. There was for me, I think. Well, I think every kid certainly had their moment. I don't know why I felt like this felt very Jod heavy episode. I don't necessarily know if there was one particular moment or like an arc for a character that really stood out, but for some reason, I really enjoyed Wim in this episode. The idea of him knowing he has to go home, clearly thinking things were going to go right back to the way that it was. It was kind of cool to see him happy to have that affirmation from Fern, in the sense of, her saying, yeah, this, I'm glad that you did what you did in regards to pushing that button and putting this on this type of adventure sort of thing. And when we get the message, while that message is certainly really heartfelt and sincere, to just it pulls at the heartstrings for every kid on there. For me, for some reason, Wims just hits a little bit more because I always one, I am a sucker for father-son relationships, and so, the idea of him having felt I don't want to say neglected, but clearly his father was busy with other things. There is that sense of, if I were to get lost, were my parents ever looking for me? Did they ever miss me if I was gone, sort of thing? And I think this is just another reassurance for Wim here that his father does love him, despite maybe not always being there for him. I don't know. I just felt, especially what you said, Stuart, that he was the first one to yell attack, to kind of run, like there was something that built up inside of him. But I don't know. Wim just really stood out to me in this episode. What do you guys think about women? Was there anybody else that might have stood out to you, or do you think Wim was the one?
I think Wim was the one for me for this week for sure. Man, and I did like that moment that as you noted, with him and Fern, and with the pushing the button. But and also another thing about Wim, I think back to one of the earlier episodes, especially whenever Jude Law's character, as Stuart calls him, when Jod had him, when they were having the moment there on the ship, and I was thinking about when Jod had comforted Wim,
Yeah.
with whenever they were, gosh, was that? I think it's episode 5. I believe that was when that was.
Yeah, when he was
Before they
crying.
before yeah. So when we had, so it was just like just really twisting the lightsaber in even deeper, because we had the moment at the end of that episode where he turned on the kids, but then this week as well, just further reinforcing the just how a bad dude he is, and just talking down to the kids and stuff. But um and really just being, just really, it did, when I was watching it, real time, I was just like, that the fear that these kids must have been feeling, because you just, because John was just so he really felt like, at least for me, I felt like, he was going to carry through with the threats. And so that, so it was very, very, for younger kids, I'm sure it was probably a pretty intense episode for them to watch. For me as an adult to feel that, I can only imagine how a kid would feel watching those moments.
Yeah, you know what? Jod, fuck that guy, man. Fuck that. What an asshole, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, super intimidating. I totally agree. If I had to ever interview those kids, I would definitely love to ask them what that day on set was like for them, because I think Jude Law really went in his bag, and I would agree with you in the sense that I don't know if the kids ever. I don't look. They've been threatened and they've been in danger, but I don't know if they've, outside of maybe them having to be at the front lines of the war at Akron, I don't know if they've ever felt so intimidated and afraid before, because they looked absolutely terrified for sure.
Because like this was the first time where it was a threat that like was personal, and it wasn't like, the other times where they were in danger where it was always just like the obstacle. This time it was like an actual personal threat, with someone that they at one point trusted. And yeah, you definitely see it. Like I think all the kids, and it's especially incredible that you can do this with a costume when they had it with oh god, why am I blanking on his name? The elephant.
Neil.
Neil. Yeah, with Neil himself. Like the fact that he, like, it's one thing when all three the other human kids are able to feel like incredibly terrified, and you can really see it in their expression. But for Neil, a costume that can't really show the same emotion, to still, like, you could still feel that fear from him. Like that's incredible suit acting right there, I gotta say. And then yeah, I think that the actor that really stood out was of course with Wim's actor, especially the kind of tear that he was shedding when Jude Law was like really getting into it with all of them. And then I also got to give a shout out to when they all get the message, and they're trying so hard to like listen to it, but the pirates are like, of course, getting into the way. The urgency that you see in their face, like they really sell it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you brought up the Neil thing too. It was one of the things that I meant to talk about in last week's episode too that really stood out to me. That final act when they're trying to get their ship out and they think that all hope is lost. I mean, you look at Neil and it looks like he's like literally about to cry. Like I don't know how they did that effect with his eyes. They just made him glaze over more, but I literally felt like Neil was literally about to cry, and I'm blown away by the performance of what they're able to do with the puppetry and the prosthetics and makeup. It's ridiculous to me. It's incredible.
Yeah.
I do want to talk finally about At Attin and this damn ship, along with who is the supervisor here. One of the clues that Wim's father gives us, he mentions in the message, go find you a Republic emissary. They'll know how to get you back home, sort of thing. I thought that was pretty interesting. There was another line here from Wim when he says, this isn't a pirate ship, it's a At Attin ship. And then I think we get another line from SM33 that says something along the lines of that Tack Renard stole the ship or something like that in order to be able to get through the barrier and whatnot. I find this so fascinating, guys, especially getting an opportunity to kind of see what At Attin looks out from the outside. This is very much what Kim kind of confirmed in episode 3 when they were like, describe your your planet to us? And they said, oh, it's like green clouds. And she's like, oh, a nebulous planet. And so, and it lines up exactly with the storms
Mhm.
and the gases and stuff. But seen on the outside was visually beautiful and stunning. But then just kind of seeing how the mechanics work to camouflage it and cause these storms and stuff. How how are you guys putting that stuff together in regards to the ship and Tack Renard and his stance here on at Attin? Do you think this solidifies him even more as a supervisor, or do you think it's still up for debate?
To an extent, I think it's still up for debate. I would say that at the very least, the show wants us to think that at the moment. I think that's the direction the show
Mhm.
is steering us to. And if it ends up not being him, it's going to be, presented like a twist. Like at this point, like right before we meet the supervisor, I think the show's going to be expecting us to be expecting it to be the supervisor.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think that's the motive. I think that's the thing that they're trying to set up for us for sure. But I know with the ship itself, I thought it was, whenever the armor and stuff got ripped off last week, when they were on the loop, the spa planet, um, and then we learned we learned this week that it was, indeed a ship that was designed, for, actually, I guess it's manufactured on that at, and utilized as basically a courier for the Mint. I thought that was for me, that was just a nice payoff for me this week.
Yeah.
It's just they put the two things together, and it's like, that makes sense now why Renard, like, camouflage ship that way with the extra extra armor. So, so to Stuart's point, I mean, I think that also just sort of reinforces why they think they're making us think that it is Dak who's who is the supervisor. And if that's the case, I mean, it's fine. I won't have a quibble with that. Um, it's okay when the fan theories do come true sometimes. I mean, sometimes they're meant to be obvious because they are.
Yeah, no, I would think that it would certainly be earned for sure if that were the case. Yeah, for I'm still trying to put together a theory. Also, like I do think Crystal is absolutely right in regards to what her theory certainly was, and I do feel like each week it continues to just back that up here. But with him saying that this is an Attin ship, I am curious about. Not look, I almost want to know like origin stories for everybody now, almost like not only John, but I need a backstory for Tacker Renard also. In the sense that it almost feels like in my head how I would like to see it play out is that we come to find out that Tack has been the supervisor for Attin for a while, and that he himself has had similar goals of whim in the sense of wanting to kind of get off the planet and do something more than just be what he is, and goes out and turns himself into a pirate. And I say that because of the disguise that his ship has. I was thinking to myself, like, why would you want to disguise that ship in a sense, right? Like maybe you wouldn't want people to kind of know that you're from Attin, like I was under the impression that the ship was protected in the sense of being able to get through the nebulous, but now I'm under the impression that it was just I'm under the impression that it was disguised for another reason, and maybe to kind of be able to fit in with the life of being a pirate and wanting to kind of be out there sort of thing, so that whenever he wasn't around, he could kind of land back on at Attin from time to time, maybe pretend to crash or bury his ship, or if you want to, on the outskirts of the city sort of mentality, maybe when his pirate days were through type of thing. So I don't know, there's a part of me that feels like there's a connection there between Tack and somebody that our main character here in Whim, in the sense of people that have wanted to get off world and have bigger lives for themselves. And Tack is from at Attin. I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah, now as you're talking about that, I think back to the very beginning of the series, and whenever we had looks like there was a mutiny on that ship, because we did find the one body like hung up. I guess they had a dagger through the heart or whatever, and also maybe you're right, Adam. That was he was using this, maybe it did originate from the planet, and he wanted to have some adventure, or maybe it was, especially if he like, was masquerading as a pirate, and then like they figured out, they figured out his cover was blown, and and so the ship crash landed on the planet, which would explain why it was like out there on the outskirts instead of in the, in the vault or whatever. So there's so many ways that can go with that.
Yes, I totally agree. I think there's a lot of ways they can easily go with it, but it did just it does fascinate me that the ship is from At Attin, so it does make me wonder, like, the idea of it being able to move back and forth whenever it wants to, was really fascinating to me. But I don't know how it explains other the other jewels of the Old Republic or a planet of Akron itself, like being as disheveled. I mean, it had the same barriers, but clearly it's in a completely different situation than what At Attin certainly is. So I don't know. Do you have any other theories, Stuart, also, or you will?
Only that maybe kind of going off your theory, he was from At Attin, but like his reputation came from the like loads of gold he took from At Attin and not from any like actual adventures. He just was a pirate with a lot of gold, and people made up stories about him because of it. That's my theory now.
Yeah, possibility, man, possibility. So yeah, we'll see, man, we'll see. But I found the At Attin stuff here really fascinating. And the concept of the Republic emissary. Like, is there even an emissary out there? Like, it's also the concept of, these people have not been, I don't want to say communicated with, but it feels like they've had no outside communication with anybody for years. I mean, the idea of a emissary ship even coming in, everybody looking up at it, almost feels like it was like a oddball thing for them to even see. So, are they under the belief that there really is a Republic emissary out there? Is there not? Is there really one? I don't know.
Yeah, well, the whole Galactic Wars, we talked about this earlier.
Yeah.
They were completely oblivious to it. I mean, they were still, so they, as far as I know, they're the Old Republic Mint, and as far as and how many people actually even know that? I mean, as far as to your point, it was a big deal to see the ship return. So yeah, so I mean, there are a lot of breadcrumbs out there that hopefully we'll get some answers to next week, and then if they do get a second season, we'll probably get even more explanation as far as what the significance of this planet is, and maybe the other jewels of the Old Republic.
Yeah, I would love to see the other jewels for sure. All right. Real quick, before we get into our grading, our last segment here. I don't know. Do you guys have any pros, any cons, like anything that we didn't touch upon, or something that you want to elaborate a little bit more on, pros or con wise?
I think I got all my pros and cons out.
Yeah, same.
I will throw one pro in here, because I'm a big George Lucas nerd, and I heard this number, and it just jumped out to me when Jod asks the robot, "How many volts do you have?" And he says 1,139 volts. I'm like, wait a minute, why does that number sound so familiar to me? And it's the classic George Lucas THX 1138, his 1970s movie that George Lucas always loves to put like Easter eggs in his movies.
Yeah, wasn't it Princess Leia's cell block number?
Cell block number.
Like
Yeah. I do find it interesting that they went one digit off with the volt numbers being 1139 instead of 1138, but it definitely was a nod to George Lucas for sure. And then we talked about, was it episode 6? Maybe it was episode 5 where they went to the spa. That was the last episode, or 2 episodes ago. I can't remember now. Well, they one of the things that we talked about, Will, was that scene felt very much like Cloud City scene when they're coming in. We definitely have a Attack of the Clones nod in here too, I think, for you Camino fans. when Obi-Wan Kenobi lands and he goes in and he pretends to be, the person
Oh yeah.
in the Kaminoans. They show him the clones and they say, we'd hope you'd be pleased, or we hope you like what you see, sort of thing. The robots say the same thing to Jod in here too when he's going down the elevator. So I don't know. I just thought there was some really cool nods to Star Wars of the past.
Yeah, and he plays along with it the exact same way Obi-Wan does. It's just like, that's why I'm here.
Yeah. 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 So I thought
we've watched too much Star Wars, y'all.
I mean, just a little bit. I was like, why does that sentence sound so familiar? And then it just connects for sure. But yeah, those are some of my cool little pros for this week's episode that really stood out. But all right, y'all. It is in fact grading time, ladies and gentlemen. The show's been doing relatively well so far for us. But it is report card time. Ladies and gentlemen, how would you grade episode number 7, the penultimate episode of Skeleton Crew? If you had to take this report card home to your parents, Mom, look what they graded episode number 7 for Skeleton Crew, and you opened it up, what would the grade be? Using the legend at the bottom, pick out your percentage and what number that or letter that would be. Will, we will start with you first, sir.
Yeah, I will give it an A-, 90. Even though I know we had quibbles about the ending. Again, it was just a very, to me, felt like a very solid, sturdy penultimate episode that as we discussed all the points tonight, even for the very plot conveniences that happen, I think there's just so many. I think Jod's story and just how it's a Stewart's point about just how he's been consistent throughout his characterization throughout the series, and I didn't all of a sudden just like change that. So that's keeping me that will. Even though I give it the merit for the ending, all the other pieces of it keeps it in a range for me.
Nice. Well, I gotta say, Will, I've really enjoyed your grading for this season, man. I've I wasn't sure how, the Acolyte I think was a tough one for all of us from time to time. So now that we have another show here, I've been really liking your grading so far, man. The positivity is just like shining off of you this season, my guy.
I appreciate that. Well, I've really been enjoying the show, and for the reasons I've articulated over the last 7 weeks.
Solid, man. Solid. Stuart, what about you, man? We haven't heard from you in a couple weeks. I want to know your thoughts, man. What did you grade this episode?
So overall, my thoughts on the show so far. Again, keeps getting better and better. And even though I think that's mostly true with this episode, I do have to give it a slightly disappointing grade, only because, again, usually with penultimates, I want to be on the edge of my seat a little bit more when it comes to that. But that's just me personally. But that being said, this episode still does deserve a B at the very least. So I'm going to go a low tier B and give it an 83.
Okay, gotcha. 83.
Yeah.
Okay,
so still
cool.
A B.
Yeah, I was like, was that 80? Okay, all right, cool. Awesome. Yeah, I might I might come in right in between you guys here just a little bit. You picked the B. I probably will go, man. I'm trying to figure out how generous I want to be here. I'm definitely gonna go B. I'm just trying to figure out if I want to go B or B plus here on this one. You know what? Last week, I wanted to give myself an extra point, and I didn't. This week, I will give myself an extra point. I'm going to go low end B plus here. I'm going to go 86 on this one. So I feel like I'm right in between you guys. So 86 for me. That'll be a B plus. Divide that by 3. We got an 86.3. Another B plus this week overall for this episode.
Awesome.
B plus 83.
Yeah, I think that's a fair grade overall.
Oh, I'm sorry. What did I say? 80. What did I say? Oh, 86. Okay, it's an 86. I don't know why I said 83. 86. All right. Yeah, 86 for this week's episode. Cool.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But yeah, guys, let us know your thoughts in the comment section box below after this particular episode wraps. We definitely would love to know your particular grade for this episode and how excited are you guys for the season finale. Guys, let me ask you, what are you looking forward to next week? Is there anything in particular needs to happen? Maybe that you feel personally needs to happen, or what would you guys like to expect to see? Anything in particular?
Let Will answer this one first.
Um, I just hope, as I said earlier, I just hope they don't like do the redemption arc. That would be the biggest disappointment for me. Other than that, I think I'm just really enjoying the series for what it is, and keeping my expectations. And I'm really going into each episode with no expectations, which I think, to your point, Adam, maybe that's why I've been like grading it so. I think I think I was kind of harsh maybe the second episode, but other than that, I've been really been enjoying this series. So yeah, I think that's as long as they don't do that, I'll be good.
Two things that I want to see happen. One, I really hope we get Jod's full backstory, or at least a good chunk of it. And while I'm with you, Will, I don't want a redemption arc for him. I do want a backstory that kind of gives you something to sympathize with him for. Show, oh, okay, I get why he's a total asshole now. And then possibly, if this gets multiple seasons, I wouldn't mind seeing a redemption arc sometime down the road. Then if they go that route, multiple seasons. But the other thing that I kind of want to see happen, I want Wim to have another chance at holding a lightsaber correctly. Just one more chance at it.
Yeah, I would absolutely love that. Yeah, I don't, I'm like you, Will. I don't really know if I have any expectation. I will say, like you, Stuart, I definitely need me a Jod backstory. I don't know if I need him redeemed, but I'm right there with you. I would like to have some sympathy for the guy in some level, regardless of what his outcome certainly might be. So that is, I don't want to say it's a must, but it's something I personally would really like to see. Yeah, I think if anything, I want to see the kids keep the ship. I want Wim to either have the ship to himself or the crew keep the ship and blast off into another adventure at the end of the season. Like, wait, we just got back. Like maybe not like that, but I want them to be able to. I just want to see a happy ending for the kids. Just
Yeah.
That's really all that I want to see at the end of that. That and maybe Attack Renard story would be great in regards to I think that's really gonna fit together nicely the way that they've written everything so far. I do think there's gonna be meaning behind things and things kind of coming full circle for a lot of these characters.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Agreed. Yeah, and hopefully this won't be a bunch of exposition dump. There
Exposition.
we go. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But all right, guys. Gentlemen, it was fantastic as always. Crystal, be safe out there. And I will see you guys next week for our finale review. If anything, we may not necessarily have it next Wednesday for you guys. We'll definitely keep you posted. If anything, we may push it to Thursday evening, but we'll certainly keep you posted over on our community tab, our community board on our YouTube channel. But let's go ahead and real quick around the circle here. Will, if people want to find you on social media, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on all the socials at Will M Polk. That's WILLMPOLK. And be sure to follow our show on all the socials at Scene and Nerd on Twitter. Also, we're on BlueSky. You can follow us on Scene_N_Nerd on Threads and Instagram. And of course, listen to all our podcasts. You can just go to www.sceneandnerdpodcast.com. We just had our first episode of 2025 last night. And we discuss What If and just a bunch of other topics from the Golden Globes to some of the things that we'll be looking forward to watching this year. So check us out. Thanks for having me on again, Adam.
Hey, as always, Will, we love having you around here, man. Stuart, if people want to find you on social media, where can they find you?
You guys can, of course, find me at TurboStew01 over on Instagram and Letterbox, and you guys can of course find me here at A+ Hero Report every Sunday, and of course next Wednesday for our review for the season finale of Skeleton Crew.
Looking very forward to it, fellas. And if you guys want to follow us on social media as well, at A+ Opinions everywhere. We're also on TikTok at Hero Report, and you can find us on BlueSky at heroreport.bsky.social. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do so, guys. We continue to grow each and every day, so your support will certainly be fantastic. Subscribe, hit that bell notification, so when we drop brand new videos, you guys will certainly be notified. But other than that, we'll see you guys next week. Hopefully we'll see you guys Sunday for A+ Hero Report. And until then, do us a big favor. As always, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep it A+. May the force be with you. We'll talk to you later. Bye.